Okay. Awesome, guys. So thanks for being here and welcome to this special Public Lab 101. We're focusing on how can we use Public Lab in our educational practices. Specifically, how can we integrate the Public Lab website to our classroom or informal teaching space, wherever we might be. I want to give you guys a brief introduction to Public Lab, which is a community and a nonprofit that's focused on democratizing science with the goal of addressing environmental issues that affect people. So just a very brief, what is Public Lab? So one of the main things that we do is work in an open community. Anyone can join this community. Much of that space takes place online on our website, which is free to join, free to post to, and having this open community allows us to have a network effect, right? So when I share something out, I'm sharing it with someone who can share that information on again. And this is what makes us strong community organizers, technologists, scientists, and activists. And this can also help us to become more engaged science students when we have a community who is looking on, supporting, and cheering on our work. In Public Lab, we believe that generating knowledge is a powerful thing. We don't want research to be just in the hands of experts, but for it to be something that everyone can do. In the classroom, we see this as students are creating their own methods, students are creating their own data, and students are sharing out that knowledge that they've created with others. Sorry. Right, so in doing this work, we enable communities who are facing environmental justice to own the science that they have done and advocate for the changes that they want to see. So a research agenda that is not set by a far off lab, but by someone who is active in that community. At Public Lab, we also promote a hands-on and do-it-yourself ethos. You might see this reflected in the DIY science kits, but also in getting out there and doing the field work yourself. We support the exploration with these tools, so taking it apart, modifying it, making it work for yourself, and sharing that back to enhance our development and how we apply these tools in our community. And everything that's created at Public Lab is open source. So what that means is that folks are able to take that knowledge, take the protocol, take the spec for something technological and use it themselves. One thing that we do ask, and that is a part of the open source movement, is that once I've taken something and I've edited it, that I share it back so that others can use that knowledge and that we can build on something together. At Public Lab, we use open data, so things that are monitored but are available widely online, as well as do-it-yourself tools. And we use those things to advocate for better solutions and environmental management, regulation, and enforcement. And we're a worldwide community with a local focus. So what that means is that while we're working online and everyone is able to join from anywhere in the world, people are working on hyper-local projects. We see those hyper-local projects in our worldwide community through our website, which is an interactive wiki where people can post their questions, they can post research, and they can also reach out to others for support, for feedback, for questions. And these research questions that people are focusing on are, again, those hyper-local issues. And those local issues are driven by on the ground community work and not always just curiosity. We work using a method that we call community science. And that is something that is different from citizen science. So in community science, you can see here, we're working in a large network that has room to grow. You might be working on your own project with your own, hyperlocal issue, but by generating and sharing that knowledge, you might share a piece of information that helps someone in another network, another piece of that network to work on their own individual project. Versus citizen science, where there might be one major person who is setting up our research question or goals, and it is kind of doling out these tasks and parceling out information to folks. Everything is accessible in our network when we're practicing community science. So a few principles of community science, and I caveat that this is a non-exhaustive list, but that community science is science that supports the goals of communities. These goals are defined by the community and not by some far-off research agenda. And also that these community members are participating in every single piece of this project, from defining research questions to tools and methods, to how we report back and analyze that data that we found. And also that communities have ownership of the data produced, not just that we can go on to an online portal and access it, but that we're able to use that data, we're able to communicate about that data, and through that, we drive community action. In a classroom, this looks like youth-led participatory research where community members might be helping to guide some of the, this is what we're interested in, or here's knowledge I can share, but that students are involved in every aspect of the process. They aren't being handed a protocol and said, okay, if you add this many drops of something to this, then see what happens. But we're saying, okay, this area floods, we have this question. How might you as an individual with your unique frame of reference in the world and your unique experiential knowledge answer this question? And we see that students are taking the lead in aspects of study design, data collection, and analysis, and that the data that these students are collecting, it supports not only community action, but civic engagement. And so an important part of these projects is sharing back out. Here's a graphic that we like to use to kind of look through these, 7 steps of the scientific method that, as science educators, we're, kind of driving home regularly. And how might students engage in this in the traditional science method versus in a community science method? And you can see through our wonderful color coding here that, when students aren't being handed a protocol to use their hands-on, that valuable hands-on science time just to, check all the boxes and weigh out the things and do exactly what they're told, but to actually start from an observation of their own, and do research, but include community members in it. Form a question that is relevant to you, that's interesting to you, create your protocol and collect your data. We get this much more engaging, much more holistic version of science that actually extends outside of the classroom and that they can see and apply and be interested in their daily lives. So what I'm going to do now is pass it over to my colleague, Ashley, and they're going to take you on a little bit of a tour of the Public Lab website and share with you how you might use this in your classroom. Ashley, over to you.
Thanks, Mimi. Yeah, and so I just wanted to give everyone an opportunity to hear what's so great about the Public Lab website. First off, like Mimi was mentioning, it's really important when you're doing experiential, hands-on, and community-led science to make sure that you have a way to share that and engage with others. So the Public Lab website was created in a way so that you could do just that. And it's open, and you can think about it like a Public Lab field notebook or an open notebook that you can interact with online with a global community of contributors. So like Mimi has shared, you can document and share your projects, problems, and results, and learn about the experiences of other community members in real time, and connect with others across various geographic regions who may be facing similar or very drastically different concerns as you, and learn along the way. We have a way for you to learn about topic level interests, everything from like air quality to wastewater, to soil contamination, for instance, or microplastics. And we'll give you an example of what that looks like in curriculum a little bit later on in this event. So the first thing that you'll want to do is when you create a username on the Public Lab website, there at the top bar in black, there is an area that you can select, which I believe says, sorry, y'all, I'm used to doing this in live. If you go to community, that tab at the very top in the black bar, there is an immediate drop down that will show that says getting started. And when you select that, it'll prompt you to sign up your username, and you can link that with a existing Google Suite or other platform or your choice, or you cannot link it to an existing user, and you can also just create it manually, like creating a username and your password, and save it however you would like. And once you get started, you'll log in. You'll know that you're logged in because if you look at the top right corner of the screen, you'll see that it says dashboard, and you'll have an option to add a profile photo. You can do this as discreetly as you'd like. I personally, for instance, use an animation of a frog for myself, so you can have fun with it. Anyways, that's going to be the area where you know that you're logged in, because you can select that dashboard feature and it will show you more about your bio, which you can personalize. But that's where you know you're logged in, and you'll be able to see kind of the interior side of like what's the inside of your journal or this website, and it's called the dashboard. So with that, the dashboard allows you to find the work and the community members that you want to share your work with or ask questions to. So there are a couple different ways in which you can do this. So for instance, in the top far right, where I was mentioning the dashboard and your user image is, you can select that big blue bar that says share your work. This will have some drop down capabilities that host some options for yourself. Let me go in there real quick. When you select that, it'll give you 4 different options, which are share a step-by-step activity, share a research note, ask a question, and post an event, or tell your story on the blog as an additional 5th feature. We're only going to be covering a portion of these today, but you'll be able to explore these on your own time once you've created a username and signed up. But the most important and fun one, that's a really easy way to get started, is to post your first question, which you'll notice right below that share your work button is the ability to select that and jump right to our ask a question feature. So when you select that option, you will be taken to publiclab.org//questions, which will have this header that says questions and answers. And we have a screenshot here of it for you to see what it looks like static, but you can interact here where it says ask a question. You'll be able to type in that text box. We recommend like maybe a short, like 1 or 2 sentences there, and then you can select the blue button that says continue, and that will take you to another portal where it allows you to create more details of the question. This is, for instance, like you initially asked like a question about, I'm finding a certain algae in my river. What is it? Would be like maybe that first question you type. And then when you go into this bodied text, you can actually put in more details. Maybe you have an image you want to share from the field that you've taken. Maybe you want to add a link to something that you read about the algae or like water contamination. Whatever that interest is to you to elaborate more for the reader on the website, you can do as little as you want here. So an example of this when you go forward is you'll be able to ask a question, next slide, and be able to see a Q&A in action. So for instance, here we have, once you've typed that 1 or 2 sentences, you'll see the question highlighted in blue, and it says the question is posed as, what is the best method of data logging a location in the field without cell reception? This question was posed by one of our public lab fellows that's based in Southern California in the US, who lives in a rural part of Los Angeles County, who wanted to figure out, like, I have this, do I use an app? Should I be using like paper documentation where I'm going out to monitor air quality where I'm like living? And so you can see that Sarah posted this question, and then beneath that, you'll see that the question was posed. It says by Sarah Sage, which is her username, the time and date, and then there's a hyperlink there that you can, if you wanted to share out that question on your own social media or others, you can click that hyperlink logo there and share it out. It's like a copy and paste feature. But you'll see that in the body of this question is more details where she outlines the problem about where in her community she's testing air quality and using some handheld devices and tools. And she's having some challenges with getting that data that she's collecting from, say, an app or some other tool, and getting it to sync up with like when you don't have Wi-Fi out in the field, in this case, in a rural community. So she posed this question with some a little bit more context. But as you can see, one of the benefits of posting this on the Public Lab website when you do the Q&A in action is that if you can go to the next slide, you'll see there's some responses. So after you post this question and give it some time, it may not post right away. We do have moderators on our website that go through to make sure the content is, free of viruses and any of these things, and it'll be posted live within 24 to 48 hours. And once it goes up, other people have the option to interact with it. It'll show up on the dashboard for people to interact with. And then if they're interested in responding, you'll see an activity much like this one. So we had a couple followers from our Public Lab broader community. Sean, for instance, responded to Sarah, our Public Lab fellow, with some details, asking some more questions, being like, hey, I'm not familiar with where you're at. Can you give me a little bit more information about the tools you're using and what's going on here? Are you using GPS? And then, you'll see that somebody else, AGN, who's another user, posted some other thoughts or considerations for Sarah, our fellow, to think about. And then Sarah, as you can see on the far right, also gave some, they added and tagged Sean and AGN and also responded back with a lot more information. These are showing people that are, very inspired and very committed to their communities and have put a lot more content than maybe the average person does, but you're welcome to do as little or as much as you want in your response back to other users. However, we find that the more information you're able to share, it helps people answer your questions for your place-based concern. So in this way, the question feature kind of creates a live feed for others to receive comments from the community, no matter where they are in the world. And the original poster is able to get notified of these comments when somebody interacts with them. The notifications will get pinged to the user, in this case, Sarah, by email. The next section that we'll go over today when we're thinking about posting is posting a research note. So you'll see that I linked here at the top that publiclab.org//post is what will take you here. So we kind of have a similar template where we have the header bar in black, which has the search bar and some of the other features we talked about, your login dashboard. And then we have what we know here is an editor. So at the top, you create a title for your research note. So think of this as like your journal entry in your notebook. So what is it that you're going to be writing about today? And then if you have an image that you want to associate with this, you can choose a file from your personal computer, upload it, or an open source image, and link that here with a proper accreditation. You're available to put as little or as much as you want about your location. You can do a general geographic area. You don't have to be precise about your lived, like exactly where you live, but this way it matches with our public lab map that we have on our website so that other people in the world can find others organizing around environmental injustices where they are, by looking at the map and be like, oh, there's somebody also in the Pacific Northwest in US down in Portland, Oregon. You can click on that user, for instance, and send, not be able to send them a message, but you can post something and maybe tag them, be like, hey, this is concerning you. I'm going to @Purl, and see if they respond back to me. So we don't have direct messaging, but research notes are your way to share your thoughts and concerns with others and tag other people to get them interested. So when you go down to the next slide, you will see sharing information on the research note. So again, much like the question, this is where you'll, in step 4, enter as much content as you want about whatever it is that you're journaling about. We'll show an example here in just a moment. But the most important thing about this is that the editor, which is the item that you're typing live into, you can share info, apply the formatting you'll want. You'll see that you have the ability to do bold, italicized, quote things, enter bullets or other lists or numbered lists, and add hyperlinks or images and other certain features that you can add there. So you're also able to embed HTML content like videos or good docs of PDFs. So we encourage you to use this to your abilities to, bolster up the information that you want the community to know about so that they can respond and serve you and connect with you. The most important part of this and how the public lab open website and journal works is that in number 5, the most fun part, I think, because everybody is used to hashtags in social media, you can kind of think of this as our way of doing hashtags on the public lab website. You can type in certain tags to add to your research note. So this journal entry, for instance. So in this case, we'll think about Sarah and the question that we had below. Say Sarah's like, I really want to share out with the community about our methodology that we're using. How exactly am I conducting my air quality monitoring in Val Verde, California? And how did I select the sites in my community that I'm going to? How did I select 5 to 7 sites in that Val Verde as a community, right? And how did that? So she writes a long research note, she adds some background context and information. And then when she gets to step 5, she'll be able to link, air dash quality. So if it's more than one word, you want to make sure that you separate the word with a dash, and other relevant information. If she's using a handheld device that's like a GPS unit, she can tag here GPS in all caps if she wants. And she could also make a tag related to her project. This could be the location, which could be Val Verde, right, for her community. And she could use the tag California for this case. You can put as many tags as you want here. The benefit of doing this is that other people that subscribe to, say, we'll use California as a big example. If there are other subscribers to the tag California on our website, which public lab users can do, they will get notified anytime someone posts a research note with that tag being used. So it's a way for you to notify other people in the broader public lab ecosystem to know that you're asking for help or you're sharing new information so that people can interact with you. So next slide. So this is an example of a research note that we had from a community that went up in the last week in, I believe, Maine. So you'll see that here that the title of their research note is the proposed Wolfden mine at Picket Mountain. And you'll see again, like we had in the questions, you'll be able to see the username in blue on the far left. You'll see that there might be a tag there about a new contributor or whatever it says in that area, the time and date stamp, and again, that hyperlink. So the formatting there will remain the same. You can see on the far right, some of the tags that they used have shown up, and the most popular ones that have a lot of followers have shown at the top. So you'll see first time poster, because this is the first time they've posted on the Public Lab website. So this might kind of be your badge of honor, for instance, when you go to this activity. And then in this case, it's around water quality. We have a lot of users that are interested in this, as water, right, is a very important concern. So you'll see that that tag kind of surfaced to the top. You'll see underneath of that there are other tags that maybe you aren't seen in the boxes right there, but if you click that plus sign, it'll open and expand them out, and you can see the others that are associated with this post. And there's some other features there for if you want to share it for social media purposes or get traction on those platforms. But the most important part here, right, is after they've created the title and you've seen who's contributed this content, you can see a little bit more about the background history of this research note or this journal entry. You'll hear more about the mining company that they're concerned about, where they might be located. It's like the who, what, where, when, why questions that we typically ask might be outlined in this in the body of this research note. And if they added any additional information, you'll see that reflected about who else is involved. If there's a website, it doesn't need to have a website, but if there's any other ways that they want you to interact with them outside of the Public Lab interface, they may include that here as well. So that's an example, a great example of a current environmental concern happening somewhere in the United States. In this case, around some mining concerns, and they're looking about groundwater contamination, and they're asking for help, but they're wanting to give a broader sweep overview of what's going on so that other people can learn about it. So diving deeper into this, maybe you don't have all this information just quite yet. You are just aware that something is happening in your community and you're kind of just in the getting started phase. Maybe you're not familiar with how to organize around mining concerns, but you know that something is happening in your community. That's where our next item that you can post on the website, an issue brief, comes in. So you can see here that we have publiclab.org/wiki/issue-brief, again, because it's 2 words. You'll see a formatting here that lists a couple sections. So kind of like the who, what, when, where, and why that we talked about in the research note. The issue brief kind of streamlines this by asking, give us a brief introduction, and it gives you the instructions. It'll say, replace this text with some context for what you're sharing. For example, you can provide a brief introduction to the community and give some context to the issue that you're posting about. So whatever it is that you're curious about, how little or as much information that you have, you can write what you know here. It doesn't have to be a long like paragraph or anything. It can just be 1 or 2 sentences. And then your main concern. Maybe it's just 1 sentence. Maybe it's more than that. And then you can outline some obstacles. Again, you can read the subtext in that prompt, like what are the known obstacles that you're facing? Are you facing like a lack of, civic engagement in your community? Are people having their, water shut off because they can't afford it, like whatever those barriers or obstacles might be, like, is there civic unrest where you are? Like there could be a number of different obstacles that maybe you're seeing in your community, but you're not really quite sure yet how it's tied back to the main concern that you've posed here. This is just a way for you to get your initial like thoughts, your hypothesis, or maybe your brainstorming out to the public so that other people can engage with you. So you'll post that supporting information in that 3rd section. And if you know about any other people that might be similarly sharing these concerns or that are engaged around this concern, it could be a local nonprofit in your community. It could be other community organizers or grassroots community groups. It could just be your neighborhood. Or maybe you don't know, just say that. That's what goes in the who is engaged in this concern section. And then if you have any initial questions that you're thinking about, we encourage you to share them in that final section. So once you do that, you'll be able to post this issue brief. And while the issue brief will not show on the dashboard sometimes like right away, much like the questions, just give it 24 to 48 hours and our team will moderate it and make sure that it gets to the page. Once it does go live, you'll be able to see an example like this one that we have shared here. So we have one from Lake Pontchartrain that talks about pollution and trash in the Louisiana area. And so you can see in that far right, they have tagged a general geographic location. And you can see that there's some other users in that area as well, from the blue drop links. And you also see, again, those same tag posts, the first time poster, and then the issue brief tag, which will always be connected. You don't have to type that in yourself. When you use this template on the Public Lab website, it automatically populates these for you. And then any of that information that they wanted to share about, in this case, around the trash and pollution around their local beaches and waterway, they'll indicate that in the concern. And you have a way, to go through it, kind of think through it, and you should have a way to be able to click on that underneath Lake Ponchar trash. You'll see that user. If you wanted to, you could also click that hyperlink for that user, and you'll be able to see if they've created any other posts or any other questions. So there's different ways for you to interact with them, like with other content that they've shared. However, this might be their only post that they have. So if it is, you might want to respond or add content in the comments section. And then from there, those are kind of the general overviews of the main features of our website that we wanted to show you. If we could just go back for 1 second to slide 22, which has sharing information. Back one more. One thing I also wanted to highlight, oh, sorry, go forward 2 slides. Right there. Oh, go back. Right there. So when you're looking at this slide, notice at the top of the search bar feature, we have the search bar. The one thing that I want to give you as a key feature here that a lot of people maybe get confused about on the Public Lab website is that you can use the search bar 2 different ways. When you type in, you'll notice that, say if you put air dash quality, for instance, again, 2 words, so you put the dash in between. If you type air quality, it'll start to auto-populate like a waterfall effect of other items. Those are those tags that we were talking about that community has created around that topic area. In this case, a very big one, air quality, and the concerns around that. So you can use that cascade waterfall effect to select any of those like things that are related to air quality to click, and it'll take you to like a research note or a question or anything like that about air quality. Or if you type air dash quality and select that magical magnifying glass, it'll take you to an internal search feature that kind of pairs Public Lab, the nonprofit, with Google, and it'll show you our most popular hits on our website in another database. So there's 2 ways to use the search bar that I just wanted you to be aware of, because it can be disorienting as a first-time user, but they're there for your general information and knowledge gathering. So the first important part is that if you see a bunch of drop downs when you're typing, those are those personalized tags from the journal entries that other people have posted, and they will take you to other questions, activities, or concerns that other community members have raised. And if you collect the magnifying glass as an enter, it'll take you kind of to a like auto-populated the top 5 or 10 searches that people used for that topic of concern that you typed in the search bar through Google's lens, for instance. So both ways get you to the same thing. It's just a way for you to know what's going on. But then I'll have you go ahead and go forward to where we last left off, and we'll move on really quickly to talking about curriculum.
Okay, so we're going to be focusing on one particular set of curricula today, and written by our very own Mimi, who might want to chip in at some points and make some additions. But so this is our community classroom in the community science in the classroom curriculum. So it's separated into 4 phases, which includes 13 lesson plans. So our first phase includes students exploring and identifying certain environmental problems that are specific to their environment, their local environment. Let me try and slow down. I'm talking too fast already. But anyway, so students are going to be considering problems that are local in their local environment, and thinking critically about successes, failures, things they would have done differently, and how they can use the data that they're absorbing to create their own methodology and practice and research thesis. So that moves them into considering certain methodologies, tools, and identifying ways in which they can take what they've accumulated in that phase 1 into phase 2, and then towards data collection, and then create a method of storytelling and sharing that with their community. So if we want to move into the next slide. Speaking specifically to some customizations that we can do, it is not a one size fits all. There are going to be some pieces of the curriculum that are potentially redundant to what educators have done already. And so there's an opportunity to pick and pull, and some lesson plans for certain age groups might take longer than others. This past year, we were able to share this with 9 educators that implemented it with over 200 students, approximately 12 classrooms. Some educators were able to do it in 2 months. For some, it took 4.5, and it was different for everybody. So one educator had 2 7th grade classrooms, and they ended up creating one research thesis between the 2 of them and did all of that data together. Meanwhile, we had a 12th grade classroom where they worked individually. So each student was creating their own thesis statement, their own forms of data collection, and their own methodology for what they needed to do to share that with their local community. Oh yeah, perfect. Next slide. I'm actually going to skip this one. So moving towards phase 1. So like I said, this is where students are learning about what community science means and how they can use those principles into exploring what sort of research they want to be doing. So by the end of phase 1, they'll have a clearly defined topic area, a research question, an idea of how they want their study to affect their community, and a list of potential advocacy outcomes. The way that this relates to activity on our website is they're going to be creating accounts. This can be done depending on the age group. This can be done through one shared account. It can be done through group accounts, or it can be individual. So they're going to be posting a question like we just learned how to do, and then they're also going to be creating an issue brief. And then if you want to go to the next slide. So this is when they begin their methodology practice. So again, they're going to be looking at what folks have done in the past, how this has worked or not worked, what they would do differently, tools they'll need, and then also thinking about potential backup plans, because that is a huge part of science. And so by the end of phase 2, they should have a strong background for what their research is going to look like. They're going to know what tools they want. And then they're also going to have an idea of the chronology and necessary gathering tools for how long they're going to be collecting data and the type of data that they're going to be collecting. In terms of how this relates to Public Lab, they'll have shared a research note, and then they'll begin creating a project page. And then they should also be sharing that work plan and chronology on Public Lab. So if you want to go to the next slide. So this one is where there's kind of the most ambiguity in terms of how long you want to be doing data collection and the amount of time in the classroom that you want to dedicate to that. So for some folks, that only took a couple days. For others, it took up to 5 weeks even. So for example, we had one group of students that was studying soil quality in Edgard, Louisiana. And so they wanted to collect soil samples from 5 different places in that township. And it took about 2 weeks or 3 weeks actually, for those soil samples to come back. And while they were doing that, they were monitoring the weather and climate patterns that were happening. Meanwhile, another group alternatively was studying potholes and how that socioeconomically affected locals in 3 different neighborhoods. And that data collection only took approximately 2 days. So there's a lot of variability here. But by the end of phase 3, students should have collected all their data, shared it in a way that viewable on Public Lab, and also beginning to think critically about how they can share that to their general community. And then thinking what went well, what didn't go well, and how am I going to use that to strengthen the story that we're beginning to narrate with this data. So if you want to go to the next slide. So this is the make it or break it moment of, here's all the data. How are we going to funnel this into a narrative that we can share with our community that makes a difference? So there's a level of analytical thought that needs to go into it. And then thinking about what type of medium they want to do, both internally and externally to Public Lab. So for some folks, this past implementation, that was creating how do I say this? Creating an entire website separate from Public Lab and sharing their data and thinking about who's my target audience, who in my community can help make the change that I'm seeking, and what exactly is that change? How does this data support action? So there's an advocacy component here that's important. Why should others care about the work that we've done? Mimi, is there anything you want to add?
You're doing awesome. I think you're covering so much. It's wonderful.
Okay, great. Next slide. Okay, actually, Mimi, if you want to talk on this component, since it was a year 1 implementation.
Yeah, so this is giving us some thoughts on what might running a curriculum like this look like in practice. So they're just giving you 2 examples of classrooms here and how much class time and what the project duration might look like. For this first classroom, they're running it as a unit, and they use, a certain number of they use a selection of the lessons, and they do 60-minute lessons. So this class spends 10 hours and a total of 5 weeks on this project, versus classroom B might be doing it alongside a unit on climate change. So they are doing 90-minute lessons, and they're only teaching on Fridays this lesson. So this group has spent a total of 16.5 hours over the course of the semester working on this project, but that was over the course of 11 weeks. So this is just to talk a little bit towards how might I customize this to work in my classroom, recognizing that I have many standards that I need to meet. I may have testing concerns, just to show some of the flexibility that we have available in this curriculum. And so what we're going to do now is pause. We'll go ahead and take some questions. But before that, we're going to stop our recording. So thanks you guys for listening, and we're going to go into some questions and answers.